What's up, guys? This is What If Goku was the god of war. Now, here's how we have to start this What If off. We have to admit, this won't be an easy one, but in this version, Beerus, occasionally other gods are meddling in his universe. Hundreds of gods. Actually, not hundreds, but like, every god of the other universe meddles in his verse whenever they feel like it. They don't give a fuck. He's always asleep, they don't care. Same for Champa's verse, they just keep going in those two and they don't give a fuck. But in this version, there's a difference. There's a god, Kitela. He's the mouse god of destruction. He's basically the only one that's... He's one of the only two gods of destruction weaker than Champa. And he decided something. He would make some mischief in Beerus' universe. He would see that Frieza was destroying the Saiyans. He knew one Saiyan went to Earth. So him and his angel went over there, waited 6 years, keeping an eye on him. Then, they waited till the boy was around 7, and actually, they waited till he was 6. Right when he turned 6. That night, when he looked at the moon, it was nothing really unusual. It was just him turning into the Ozaru, which Grandpa Gohan actually knew how to survive. He would just calm Goku down. He was just like a giant baby in the form. So he would basically just play with him for about the entire night, once every month, and then go back to bed. They would sleep through one day and then go back to regular routine. Not even that hard to do, it was just pretty easy. But in this version, it was a different time. For the first time, Goku's eyes went blood red. Gohan went to do the same normal playing around, but instead, he was killed by his grandson. But this wasn't the power his grandson had. In this version, a Goku with a power level of 100 in this form because he had power level of 10 in his human form. His Ozaru form having a power level 100 wouldn't be able to kill Grandpa Gohan. Maybe it could injure him because his power level was only 130, but this wasn't normal. As exhausted as Grandpa Gohan was in this fight, he didn't want to kill his grandson. So, in his dying breath, he left something to Goku. The Blades of Chaos. Grandpa Gohan's old weapons of choice. Still razor-edged, and with the primordial flame, they're strong as hell. Now, in this version, there's not just God Destruction, God of Creation, and Angel, and as the big things for each universe. There's also the God of War, which is a vacant spot for every, universe. They haven't found a reasonable candidate in millennia. Every other God of War has either gone soft or decided to leave it. Thing is, this is when an event would happen. As Goku was so enraged, there was something written down on the ground next to Grandpa Gohan's body. By the gods. You're welcome. Seeing this, he knew who did it, the gods. As enraged, you could hear him roar, with a primordial wrath that none had ever matched. He was pissed. Goku would yell, "You gods will all die, every one of you," with roaring out of, "You damn gods!" Young Goku would pick up the Blades of Chaos. This is when the Angel would arrive, and Kitela. They would both say, "You swear vengeance on the gods, but you don't even have the power to take on a mere Kai." As they started to laugh at Goku's face, Goku charged at them. 3 weapons would fly towards him. The Blades of Chaos, and the Leviathan axe, as well as a bow and arrow, would fly towards him as well. A case of arrows. As well as the bow that is wielded by Atreus, with multiple knives coming out as well. These were property of the giants. But they were given to Grandpa Gohan, as the giants had sadly passed a few years prior. Only one of the few giants left would be the Ox King, which Goku has no clue about. Thing is, an enraged... Actually, the bow would appear, the knives would appear, but not the Leviathan axe. As Goku's rage overtook him, he tried attacking with the bow and arrow, which he was a master marksman with. Kind of like Atreus. Thing is, the arrow would just be caught by Catella and thrown back at Goku. Actually almost cutting his face, but not yet doing anything. And then there was a spell. Something that only the Angel of Catella decided to learn magic of. It was the ability to force their sins to show. This for the sin of killing his grandfather, by the god of destruction granted, his ashes, which were burned onto him, would stain Goku's skin pitch white. His rage looking at them, there were still parts of his body that wasn't colored like that. But there was the blood his grandfather had. It would stain his arms. It would give him this exact pattern on him, matching Kratos' from God of War. Also, if y'all haven't played God of War Ragnarok, I insist y'all play it. It's pretty fun. I've already reached the end of it, so it's pretty cool. I'll probably do spoilers in another video, but don't watch that if you don't want to be spoiled. So, back to the What If. So, in this What If, we have a whole nother event. Goku, stained with white, starts walking forward. And he obtained the title God of War, which is an unused title. Now, granted, it's always been a thing, but thing is, Zeno doesn't choose who becomes it. It chooses who becomes its power, in a sense. The God of War is something only 12 should ever be able to come. But Goku took all 12 slots of God of War at once. This has never happened before. Mind you, this is a 6-year-old Goku with a power level of 100 in Ozaru form, having the power of the God of War titles, which usually would grant power, but they don't grant him anything. They just let his vengeance take him. As Goku's eyes open wide with wrath around him, his body starts to bulk out more and more, showing a lot more muscle on his physique, but not much. As he would fly towards Catella with Leviathan, with the Blades of Chaos, stabbing him straight in the chest. Though this only barely scratched Catella's chest, leaving a small scar. Now, Catella didn't expect this. This shouldn't have been possible. But Goku's power as the God of War starts to show. It actually starts to injure Catella. After about 4 slashes and 4 very noticeable scars that are quite large, one on the abs, one on the face, and 2 on the chest, one on one side, the other on the other, there was very noticeable cuts on him. Catella was so enraged, his destruction energy started to overtake him. He tried destroying Goku, but the rage Goku felt was enough to send the destruction energy back at Catella. Yelling for his angel to help him, his angel grabbed the God of Destruction, grabbed the Hakai energy, and tore it out, destroying it instantly. This is when Catella would say, "You think you can kill a God of Destruction? We'll see you in years." As he would basically just warp out of there, giving Catella the chance to get healed by his God of Destruction, but still leaving the scars. These ones wouldn't be fully healable. Catella was pissed. He'd never been scarred before. The only one who ever come close to doing this was Beerus. Which, no doubt Beerus would do this again would do much worse than this if he found out that Catella was snooping in his universe. But, I digress. This is when we get to see a whole different Goku. As he hit the ground, injured and beaten, blood all over his mouth, he wipes it and started going hunting. Now, he never showed, we don't get to see these often, but there was a good bit of arrows in the hut in this version. About 30 or so. Goku only ever used 1 or 2 of these arrows, because he'd never missed his mark. He would hunt these giant dinosaurs, tear them apart with his Chaos Blades, or just do whatever he wanted. He was hungry, he ate. Goku still has his crazy appetite, but in this version, every day he trains. His power level reaching roughly about 500 by the time he reached the age of 12. 6 years have passed, and he's done nothing but train for this moment. And this is when he sees Bulma. He keeps his tail, but he looks at her in an odd surprise. Whenever she shot those bullets, they bounced off of him. He's stronger than he would be in Dragon Ball Z's beginning. He's stronger than that. He's like 500 power level. This is when he would look down on Bulma, asking her what she was doing and what she thought she was going to attack him with, and what those little bullets were. They were like arrows, but smaller and weaker. Hearing this, Bulma was surprised, and actually apologized to Goku, looking for the Dragon Ball. Goku saying, "Alright, I'll take you to it." He still cared about his grandfather's memory, but he literally has part of him on him at all times. So, yeah. As Goku would basically say, "I'll go with you." Having his Chaos Blades on his back, where Kratos had them in the original game, the bow and arrow he would keep on his back as well, but he really would only kind of more put it up, since it wasn't really his preferred weapon. So he would more set it down than anything. But he would still keep it with him, just not on his body. He could call it forward to him, same with the Blades of Chaos. But on those bandages on his arms is where he's actually got chains burned onto his skin. Something Kitella did as a kind of reminder of what Goku did, just to be a little dick. Now, this is when Goku he doesn't really have nightmares. Every night he goes to sleep, wakes up, trains, eats, goes to sleep again, trains, eats, goes to sleep. It's basically just a whole day of just doing that. But in this version, when he does go through all of this, he just helps Bulma get the Dragon Balls without even a single chance. When Pilaf attempted it, he just got pimp slapped out of his way, and with the Blades of Chaos almost killed, but with him bowing at Goku's feet, he would stop. Goku said he was worthless, putting his, weapons away. As the Blades of Chaos on his back, he would walk around. Remember, every day he's done this training, though, making his power level increase even more than it was in canon, and even more than I've already stated. With a power level of roughly 4,000 is where we're going to end him off defeating Piccolo. He hated the gods of destruction and the angels. He didn't really care for mere mortals, and didn't really know anything different about the gods. He thought that title God meant you were on the level of Kitella and all them, which he knew were stronger than him. But this is when a whole different point would happen. Goku would be completely tossed by something he wasn't expecting. His brother would arrive. He could sense this power level since he's still trained with Roshi. But Roshi, hearing what happened and why Goku had his skin pale as a ghost and those marks on his body, it would make it where making friends wasn't as easy for Goku. He wouldn't make as much friends with Krillin, and he would see Tien as more of a joke than he did in canon. Yamcha was just a mere mortal, and Goku, being the new god of war, like I said, sees himself above them, but he's quite kind, actually, which is surprising. Though there isn't a moment he doesn't think about killing the gods. When he climbed up the tower to meet Kami, who he thought was a god, he met him. And it was a whole different sight. This wasn't a god of ill will. Kami even apologized for what happened, and asked if Goku could ever forgive. Now, this is when Goku was about to strike, when he stops. "Killing you wouldn't bring me justice. It's that goddamn rat I want to kill." Seeing the darkness inside Goku, Kami would try to steal him away, but this is when Goku looked at him and said, "Don't. It's not evil, it is anger. And I am not some monster to kill the gods. But if I need to, I will. Now leave me alone. Unless you offer training, then don't offer me anything of your pity." Hearing this, Kami would agree. He would actually offer him the Hyperbolic Time Chamber. "This isn't a trap, is it?" "Of course not. You seem good, though you do have some darkness in you. But it wouldn't be really enough. He was just told to meditate to get all the anger out of him. Which, it wasn't like he was evil, it was just like he had anger. So more like the older Kratos from the new God of War from the new God of Wars, he's actually a lot calmer, nicer, and less easy to anger than he was in canon. He was really nice. Though he still had the rage of the gods, but he could control it. He didn't have darkness in him. He was pure-hearted, so he would still ride on Nimbus. But he would actually learn to fly. As Goku would then deal with his brother. But when his brother arrived, he was surprised. Because Goku had still been growing stronger. When he would wind up marrying Chi-Chi, their son Gohan would be a lot more like Atreus. And actually had a bow and arrow, Goku's. He would been given. And they would train in the mountains every day. Chi-Chi, who would sadly really not understand it, but actually understand a little bit of his rage towards the gods, which I haven't gotten to where he gets the Leviathan axe. I know I'm a little bit out of focus, guys, but at the same time, it's cold as fuck and my hands are frozen, so yeah. But back to What If. Now, this is when we get to see Goku getting the Leviathan axe. It was when he first met Chi-Chi. The Leviathan axe was actually something that her father wielded, though it looked weird in his hand. It was pretty big, though, so it wasn't looking too off, but at the same time it didn't look right. Though it was the axe of the giants, and it was basically property of the Ox King, as the last remaining giant. Thing is, his daughter, he was thinking about getting the axe head melted down to give his daughter a new helmet, but his daughter didn't want that. So this is when we get to see the difference between Goku and Goku's canon self and this version. He doesn't really care much. When he heard marriage, he didn't really care and agreed. Didn't think of it as food, just didn't really care what it was. But this is when we get to see that Goku knows what he's doing. By a little bit, at least. Whenever he saw Roshi the Kamehameha, he would do it. But in this version, the Ox King gave Goku something, since Chi-Chi kinda loved him, and he was far from his old fighting days. He picked up the Leviathan axe, something many people were scared of the Ox King wielding. It was a one-shot type of weapon. There'd only been about 3 people who'd ever been able to match the Leviathan axe swinging capabilities. And the thing is, those were Roshi, Grandpa Gohan, and the almost legendary-like power of Kami. Those were the 3. Those were the only 3 that ever stopped the Leviathan axe. Granted, I'd say Popo has actually slowed it down, but never fully stopped it. And it was more with his magic he had to use to stop it fully. But with Bruce Force, he's only slowed it down. But this is where we get to see another difference from the series. Because this is when Goku was given the Leviathan axe. As he put it on his back, he thanked the large man, surprisingly enough. He would say, "Thank you, Ox King. It is an honor to have this weapon. I know it will serve me well." Then he asked, "So what's the catch of giving me this?" "Well, you must marry my daughter, of course." "I understand. Goodbye, Ox King. I will meet you later in years." Okay. As he called the Leviathan axe to him, he said, "It worked." "Of course it did. It suits you. It chose you as its wielder now. Go, have your adventures, boy." Alright. As Goku would proceed to start going, he would go through Dragon Balls, like I said. When Piccolo, he was going to kill Piccolo, but then he stopped. His kindness would still show through. Even his rage would stop. This was no god. It was just a child who was angry about the death of his father. Something Goku could understand. As he grabbed onto Piccolo Jr., giving him a sensu bean, telling him, "Boy, you have anger towards me, I understand, but I wish for us to be more friends than foes. One day you can see this. Until that day, if you want this rematch, you may get it." But mind you, Goku is so much stronger that it wouldn't really matter. And this is when we get to see when his brother arrives. Now, the thing is, Goku looks eye to eye with his brother, saying, "So you're my brother? Why are you so pathetically weak?" Even the humans outpower him, since they've been training with Goku. This is when he would surprisingly say, "You think you're stronger than me, brother?" And we would get a remake from the actual God of War game. Hercules versus Kratos. Where we have, surprisingly enough, Raditz taking the role of Hercules, obviously, and Goku taking the role of Kratos, though it's a lot less of a difference in size. As Goku would look eye to eye with his brother, he said, "So what now?" This is when, surprisingly enough, Kratos, the part of him that was like Kratos, would say, "Kill him." But it was kind of weird. It was like he had two voices in his head. One saying kill, the other saying protect. This is when we get to see that Goku wasn't full of he was still full of anger, but not yet. This is when we get to see him stop his swing. With the Leviathan axe, he was about to behead his brother, which he would have almost killed him and beaten him to a bloody pulp, but he is stopped by, surprisingly enough, his own son holding the axe back, using the bow. As Goku stopped, he looks at his son and sees what's going on. He sees the monster he's becoming. He stops and apologizes, picking his brother up and offering him a senzu bean. Even though Raditz was wary of this, he knew that it wouldn't be poison, since, he wouldn't need to poison him. So he accepted. Quite grateful, actually. Alright, so this is when we get to see that Goku is still, a little bit more of an intelligent person. He would decide that he would wait for even just a little while before he did anything crazy. Though this is when we're approaching when he's actually going to become the God Killer like Kratos. Now this is when we get to see Katella. He's been snooping in on Beerus' universe again. Looking at Goku, knowing that Goku wasn't yet too much of a threat to him. Granted, he wasn't weak, but he was not fully a threat. This is when we get to see why Goku really took Kratos' role. When Goku, with his own brother, asked him why he came over to Earth. Hearing about this monster and almost godlike presence of Frieza. Thing is, Frieza was a mere emperor, no god, so he wasn't worried. But at the same time, he wasn't confident about killing Frieza. Especially with the power said to be had by Frieza. He was supposed to be on the level of a god. Hearing this, he thought maybe Katella was partnered with this Frieza guy, and he had something to do with it. Or at least he may think so. Which he didn't, but at the same time, possibly. This is when we get to see that Goku has a little bit more like Kratos than we expected, as he would basically pick up the Leviathan axe and threaten to turn him into a mere example. Thing is, Gohan, who's been treated more like a soldier than Goku would have ever taught him, like in canon, would actually train. Now this is when Goku, surprisingly enough, would wind up going to meet another god. Since this would be when he would meet King Kai. A god in his own right. Though, not quite on the level of some of the other gods. This is when Goku learned of his Kaioken, which was a lot similar to Spartan Rage. And when he was really mad, he would use it. Granted, you'd have to give it a break so his body wouldn't wear out as fast as it could, but still, as Goku would start to train even harder. He would train Kaioken when he was starting to swing his axe, and surprisingly enough, his weapon could never crack. It was indestructible. Leviathan axe, indestructible and never dulling. So it was weird, because it already has all the upgrades that you can get in the game at any point. This is when Goku would decide to start actively giving back and slow down on the want to kill gods. But at the same time, he would then proceed to kill again. He would kill a god. Or at least a god in training. Catella's own little brother, who was actively there. He went to Universe 7 to threaten Goku on Catella's orders because Catella thought his own little brother would be more than enough to take on this wannabe god. Catella wanted to become a god of war. Well, Catella's brother wanted to become a god of war. The only title that can match the god of destruction. He prayed for this. Every day he trained. But then there was Goku, who beat him to the punch. He was raged, so he would try to kill Goku. This is waiting on Vegeta's arrival. But there's no more power levels involved, since Goku got more godlike every day. His power almost being around half of Kratos. This making him, sorry about that guys, this making him so strong he could match Kratos in a 1v, actually being half of Beerus. Seeming on par with the alleged Catella, or way above him at least. This is what made Catella so bullshitly terrified. Seeing Goku one-shot his brother, and he became more godlike every moment, as he would call himself the truest god of war, covered in Catella's little brother's blood. He would walk over and meet his family. His wife asking why he was covered in blood, his son asking what happened. Goku felt no need to lie. He told them about Catella. He told them about Catella's little brother who attacked him. And then he told them about his vengeance. Hearing this, Gohan would be enraged. These damn gods! As he would grit his teeth, he would want to attack the gods as well. Asking Gohan to calm down, he would actively try to nurse his rage down a little bit. Which he does. But only barely. Now, this is when we get to see why Goku is basically Kratos. As he would walk into the kitchen, and unlike normally, he would just grab himself a drink. As he would even make stew and everything that night, he would actually tell them, since his brother had now lived with them, he would start training with him. The Leviathan axe went to him, as did Blades of Chaos, but maybe there was a chance that his brother could wield a weapon. Now, in this version, there was one that Goku's never used because it simply just didn't fit him. He could use it, but he never chose to. There were these lion gauntlets. Ones that were apparently grant almost an indestructible strength. These are from the game. They were Hercules' gauntlets. The ones Kratos used to kill him. In this version, yeah, Goku basically has those. They're in a reserve with all these old weapons where the Blades of Chaos originally were. They're the ones out of the ones he chose, they're the ones that suited him. The Blades of Chaos would fly towards him, as would the axe of the Leviathan axe, while on the other hand, the bow and arrow would actually fly towards Gohan, and the two daggers, one for one, one for the other, both seeming indestructible. As these were actually weapons that were forged from Chi-Chi's old metal suit, the one she wore in Dragon Ball. That little armor she had. She decided to have it melted down by these blacksmiths and have it turned into daggers for her. giving one to her son and one to her husband. But this is where a difference would happen. She would have technically enough metal for a third. But she never needed to make one. She didn't think she would need one. She only thought she'd ever have one kid. This is when Goku started, training. As she could tell, felt he could kill Goku. But he didn't think he was yet there. As this is when Goku would actually wind up having to deal with Vegeta. He absolutely one-shot both of them like they were trash to him. Mind you, he trained for about 4 months in, the area he needed. After that, he really didn't give a fuck and started to beat the ass. Now, this is when we get to see a huge difference. Because Goku is there when the Saiyans show up. And, surprisingly enough, Goku has been training with his brother, and even though his brother wasn't quite on his level, they would actually gain to an equal footing quite soon. One of the slots of God of War would actually go towards Raditz. And this is when it was surprisingly enough. He wouldn't change his look at all. He would just become a God of War. Which would basically feel odd. He felt off. But he still had the weapons. So he kind of liked them. This is when he would actually decide to walk over. He would keep training with his dear brother. And even his nephew. Who, at this point, would find a blade. The one that Odin had. Fuck. Yeah, I'm spoiler warning for God of War, Ragnarok. There's a blade that Atreus got from Odin for a while, and this would be summoned by Gohan, who would wind up getting it and training with his uncle. This was a rare weapon to find, but at the same time it was pretty cool. Now, Mjolnir was there, though we're saving that one for a while. It's in the armory, but never really used, like most of the weapons. This is when, surprisingly enough, Goku would actually pick up his son and even pull his brother with him, and they would actually visit Vegeta. Surprisingly enough, a weapon would go to almost choose him, but it wouldn't make it there in time. It was somewhat of a rare weapons. It was... never mind. Actually, you know what? I don't know really that many weapons from God of War. But, actually, yeah, I do know one that would suit Vegeta a little bit. This is when a spear, crafted to kill Heimdall. More spoilers, guys. So don't watch this video if you don't want God of War spoilers. Which I'm going to put in the caption of this, but yeah. He would go and take this weapon as it would kind of fly to him as he was defeated. It would go shrinking down to almost the size of a pin, but be a full spear when it landed into his hands. As Vegeta tried swinging it, it actually almost hit Goku until Goku caught it, using it as a return to Vegeta stabbing him. Vegeta, who pulled out the spear, which would shrink in his hand, since it chose him, Vegeta would be sent all the way down to in his space pod all the way to one of Frieza's planets, because in this version he didn't really get the chance to kill anyone, but at the same time they would still need to go somewhere else, because Goku felt it was necessary to visit Frieza, asking King Kai where he was. He found out he was in the domain that only he could go. He was on Planet Namek, which they didn't have any space pods or anything. Raditz still had his, but he didn't feel like Goku could do this alone. Even though he knew how powerful Goku was, he'd rather be there in case. So they would actually decide for Bulma to use his space pod, Raditz's space pod, and even Nappa's, who had died trying to attack Gohan, who just one-shot him, really. They would basically take their space pods, and even Goku's old one, basically taking them to Bulma for her to mess with them, make it where they worked, though she would take a giant pod for them to keep training. This is when, surprisingly enough, 3 more beings would choose to join the ranks of God of War. Krillin would be given an ancient weapon. I don't know which one, guys. Y'all need to comment, because this is only, I think, going to be part 1. So was Tien and even Yamcha. They were all given one of the weapons of the gods. Actually, you know what? I think Poseidon, I'm pretty certain he had a trident, which would actually decide to fly towards Tien. 3 eyes, 3 bladed parts on his trident, whatever. There was the sword. One blade that seemed legendary. It would fly to Yamcha. It was the same blade that Kratos used to kill Zeus in God of War. I'm pretty sure 1. This is when we get to see the whole difference. As we get to see that Goku was surprised seeing that they had now had these blades. But then there was Krillin. He would actually be given boots. Why boots, you may ask? The boots of Hermes, allowing him perfect flight. And I don't know any other really weapons, so I'm just going with this. Since the boots of Hermes would grant him perfect flight. Speed that was far faster than he was used to. And he's already pretty fast, so he really didn't care much for anything else. So he decided to use these boots, which he never really needed a weapon, since the weapons, even though they would never be destroyed, neither was the boots he had. Now, Goku didn't feel right with his best friend not having a weapon. He would see what there was in the whole armory. And surprisingly enough, a weapon decided to fly to him. It was an almost godly weapon. It was the infamous, I don't remember which one it was. Actually, it looked a lot like the Chaos Blades, but it was different. In this version, there's 2 pairs of I'm pretty sure they were in the games, too. He would get a pair that looked a lot like the Chaos Blades, but they weren't actually the Blades of Chaos. There were 2 pairs, I think, that looked just like this. So they would have some differences, these ones being bright red, while the other ones having runes. Yeah, I don't really know all the weapons from God of War, sorry guys. But this is actually when we get to see that Krillin was given this blades. Though they didn't burn his arms, they didn't have primordial flame, they were just blades. Or actually, yeah, just blades. But they were still indestructible. No matter how much power you put in them, even destruction energy wouldn't break these goddamn things. This was the very weapon. This is when we get to see Goku training with all of them. Each of them granted a title god of war. Now that there is 5 gods of war, and obviously Vegeta is going to make a 6th, Gohan will make the 7th. Now, Gohan in this version would really put up the bow, since he was better off with the blade anyway, and he usually just used the sword or the dagger, or sometimes the sword and the dagger. Though, he still kept the bow and arrow with him in case he ever needed it. But there was a day that was unexpected. Right after Goku easily one-shots Frieza, a moment happened. Katella would arrive, along with 10 of the other gods of destruction. Only one missing was Beerus, who was, in this version, woken up early when they were still on Namek. Goku would tell Dende to send them all off-world to where they could go to Earth. Hearing this, Dende said, okay, sending everybody except for Goku and a select. Sorry that guys, my brother interrupted me, but yeah. This is when all the gods of destruction and angels were there. Surprisingly enough, all these gods meeting in one place, Zeno would arrive. Almost 10 minutes after the battle would start. With the group that would stay there was only the surviving of the humans. Which there was also one other who chose to become a god of war, Piccolo. Just give him one of the random weapons that was taken by Kratos. I don't really care which. Thing is, this is what makes it where Goku is back on attack. He would, and not even joking, attack all the gods of destruction at once. For what? Mainly Catella, though. As he said, "You bastard! You killed my grandfather. You killed my grandfather. You." And this is when, surprisingly enough, everyone felt the anger in Goku. The angels had to slow down Goku's group, while the gods of destruction tried stopping Goku. Surprisingly enough, Zeno would stop the battle himself with a single step in the battlefield, holding everyone in a kind of unmoving area that was cast by the Grand Priest. Hearing what happened, Goku was given the exact info on what happened. And surprisingly enough, Catella was left to fight him alone. Goku easily kills Catella. And this is when it was announced who Goku was, and the 7 other God of Wars. Now there's 8 gods of war. You know, because there's Goku, the 3 humans, Krillin, Yamcha, and Tien. That's 4. There's Piccolo, that makes 5. There's Vegeta, that makes 6. Then there's Gohan, 7. Sorry guys, I guess I miscounted. But this is when actually another event would happen. They would go back to Earth, and because they wouldn't expect this, they would still have to fight Cell, Gohan's big moment, Goku's deciding death, because a lot of his blood and power was in this thing. This is when he was stopped, but not by much. Deciding to pull back for a moment, but he would still be given some older type wisdom. As this is when Cell was killed, he calmed down a little bit more. As this is when Goku, who willingly sacrificed his body, but he would decide to be brought back, his first day dead, by them reviving everyone killed because of Cell, including King Kai, the planet, and even the monkeys. Now this is what the monkey and the grasshopper thing that was on his world, basically reviving everything. And this is when we get to see a difference. Now, this is going to be the end of part 1, guys, right after the Cell games, right before the Buu Saga, which is when Goten and Trunks are alive. They would both decide to become gods of war. And because Goku was one of the top ones, he was actually the original god of war, and now both of his sons were. Chi-Chi actually giving Goten a knife, Goten deciding to wield the knife as well as been given the bow. And surprisingly enough, Gohan was fine with just having the sword and his own knife. This is when we get to see that there was a different weapon given to Trunks. It was, surprisingly enough, the Z-Sword. And it was actually not the same Z-Sword as in canon. It was the one future Trunks wields. It is basically the Z-Sword, but with the Kai pulled out of it. Basically, it was broken, melted down, and welded into, and kind of formed into a brand new blade for Trunks. It was as indestructible as the other weapons. Basically, as long as it wasn't straight up Zeno, it could survive anything. Though Goku had to go to most planets and stop wars, so he was never really there. Same thing for everyone else. Seeing 2 new gods of war. Oh, guys, I almost forgot. Remember how now that they're all there, there is 9 gods of war. And eventually, this would be where the end would happen. The end of the full battle type thing. And by end, I do mean complete end all be all type thing. This is when Goku would decidingly take up his arms once more against Boo. Now, I was planning on stopping the video now, but forget it. This isn't just gonna be, it's gonna be the full series. As they have to deal with Boo, who is actively stopped, and decided to become a god of war himself. As they understood this and let him join, now there's 10 gods of war. Only two more to go. Thing is, after a long while of, the fighting and everything, being the gods of war, each going through the universes, thing is, there's still a universe without a god of destruction. Actually, in this version, I'm going to say Topo would decide to become the god of destruction for this other universe, where this other god had been. Because Catella was killed by Goku on, allowed by Zeno. So they just have, Topo fill in and become that god of destruction. Or you know what, no, I'm gonna say it was a whole another, rat-looking thing. It looks a lot like Catella, but he's actually the color red. He's Catella's youngest brother, who didn't really care, because Catella was an asshole. Him and his other older brother, the one Goku killed also, treated him like shit. Multiple times threatened to straight up erase him from existence, and a few times straight up almost doing it. Surrounding him in a Hakai energy until they decided to let him out. He was covered in scars. All because his brothers were assholes. This is when he was surprised enough when he met Goku thank him. Now this is when we get to see a huge difference. As Gohan, though he's the smartest and would still be a scholar, he still trains. And is the god of war. Now, we have to remind you though, they can't stay crazy powerful like this always. Though they're so crazy powerful, they would have to do a few things all the time. Now, even though they are the gods of war, they are not technically among the gods listed. They're only for the universe, for the Tournament of Power, because they abide in Universe 7. They are just mere mortals there, apparently. Really, they just aren't allowed to, not do anything, even though they're all stronger than the gods of destruction. Hell, even Krillin could walk up to Beerus and kick him in the head, and not give a fuck while doing it. This is when we get to see the real difference. As we get to see Goku would wind up fighting against Beerus whenever Beerus would truly wake up. Before, he had still been in a sleepy stupor, now he's back up. He wanted to fight Goku, who has Super Saiyan. He's learned it over the years, and he'd actually used it a little bit to... It basically turned on whenever he was fighting against Frieza. When Resurrection of F would happen, Frieza would come back quite strong, actually being a threat. But they'll instantly just get grounded again, and killed. Now, this is when the Tournament of Power would occur. At the same time, it didn't canon, because Universe 6 vs. 7 would happen. Goku being there was terrifying. Vegeta being there was even more terrifying. The fact that it almost became a god of war, deciding not to, though, was pretty happy, though. Though, this is when Goku had changed his mind a little bit. He'd been more wise. He'd no longer sought to kill gods, since he knew there were consequences for it. He was still forced to do all the god of war stuff by Zeno. Now, this is when a difference would occur. Goku would decide to hold back, and even to join the Tournament of Power as a fighter for Universe 7, being that he wasn't the god of destruction, because they'd wound up forgetting about the gods of war, not remembering how strong they were. But because they've gone through every universe, stopping battles, surprisingly enough, they've had to deal with, a few of them. Now, when all of the people in the, groups, Goku would still have God Ki and everything, have dealt with Beerus pretty easily, but didn't kill him. Gave him a hand up and said, join me then. Don't become a god of war, but join and not destroying things. At least not the good things. Alright. Now this is when a difference would occur. Goku would actually now be training against... When he fought Jiren, he was actually impressed, and actually offered Jiren a spot as a god of war. Jiren didn't want to become a god. He said no, and actively kicked Goku in the chest for Goku to unlock Ultra Instinct. And this is when Goku absolutely one-shot Jiren. This is when there was the whole easily taking out every other god instruction easily thing had became brought up, and it was kind of crazy. Now he was already stronger than the Grand Priest, fast enough to kill him and Zeno in a flash. But he didn't. He had requested to finally end this, and said goodbye to everyone. Though he didn't really give a complete goodbye, he just was retiring from God of War, though he stopped. And when he had to hear about Broly, one of his own kind, covered in rage, because Frieza was still brought back for the Tournament of Power, though at this point when he was brought back, there was a whole difference. It was more for the why the fuck not. Now, they would actually wind up using this whenever Broly came back, offering him something. Mjolnir flew to his hand. And he would actually wind up joining the Z Fighters, with Goku actually bringing him Mjolnir, since he had, left it on Earth. He would actually decide to go back to Earth, and stay there, as he would become a new god of war. Frieza, over the time in the manga, would actually become another. He would get Frieza Black, and he would actually decide to become a god of war as well, becoming the 12th god of war, filling all the god of war slots. As they were all the gods of war, they would go around every universe, stopping wars and ending them. Basically, just finally finishing it. And this is the end of What If Goku Was the God of War, full series. Bye.